From park rangers to military experts, there are many stories and alleged sightings of Bigfoot. The question is he really out there? I'm Chris, and get your cameras ready because here are 8 places where you might actually find Bigfoot. Number 8. Alaska. Bigfoot is not an Alaskan legend. However, there are those who admit that if there are 2 places in North America that he, she, it could hide without much worry of being found by the locals in the area, well, it's either Canada or Alaska. Over the course of many years, many people have seen Bigfoot within the state of Alaska. What's more, these sightings are actually quite different from the usual Bigfoot tales, such as a tribe of people actually being stalked by Bigfoot. A different group claimed to have found Bigfoot, shot at it with shotguns, but it didn't go down. When it reappeared, it had scars from the shotgun attack, but was fine for the most part. Finally, one tale said that a Bigfoot-like creature was actually observing a town full of humans, and then when they discovered it, they chased it towards a lake, to which Bigfoot actually jumped in and swam away. All of these sightings have led to the belief that Bigfoot may well and truly reside within Alaska. Number 7. Salmon River, Idaho. This particular story was actually told to a believer of the unknown himself, Teddy Roosevelt. It was a tale of a man named Bauman, who was a woodsman living out in Idaho. He and a companion went to the Salmon River to search for beaver. It was their belief that they would find a surplus in a certain area if they looked hard enough. But at the beginning of their journey, they didn't have much luck. As they continued their trek, they came to an area where a death had happened the year before, under mysterious circumstances. But the men wanted to keep going so that they could catch the beaver den they were after. They went into the territory and spent 3 nights there. Each night, a creature emerged from the woods and would mess with their tents, making sounds that neither men could describe in full, and had an odor that was deep and rank. Eventually, Bauman went on his own to get the beaver that they had collected and brought back to the camp. When he returned, though, his companion was dead, and there were distinctive fang marks on his body, not to mention his neck was snapped. Upon seeing this, Bauman left immediately and told everyone he could about what happened. His story even got published in his own writing in The Wilderness Hunter. Number 6. The OTAY Mountains. The border between California and Mexico is blocked mostly by the OTAY Mountains. And many know that the areas that these mountains cover is quite treacherous, not the least of which is because it seems that Bigfoot might reside in these areas, along with a lot of other paranormal and unexplained phenomena. But the main source of this story is actually a Border Patrol agent by the name of Rocky Elmore. He not only noted his findings, he made a book about them after his retirement from the service. What's more, his stories have reliable sources to back them up. Rocky knew the area because many illegal immigrants would go through the mountains to try and get into the US. While tracking one group of them one foggy night, he felt the presence of a creature. This was amplified when the creature made a splash in a nearby river. This in turn sent a pack of coyotes fleeing in the opposite direction. Watching Rocky and his fellow agents was a thermal scope operator who used the technology to look for bodies. As he watched Rocky and the agent, he described a large bipedal creature stalking them. Upon seeing this, he ordered the 2 to get out of there immediately, and they did. According to the operator, the creature, whatever it was mere feet from them. And now for number 5, but first, if you have any stories yourself, feel free to share them in the comments below. I'd love to read them. And be sure to subscribe before you leave, okay? Number 5, Everglades, Florida. The Bigfoot legend isn't just rooted in one all-encompassing creature. There are actually some spin-offs of the Sasquatch, and one often told legend is that of the skunk ape, a Sasquatch that apparently lives in the Everglades of Florida. The biggest difference between a regular Sasquatch and a skunk ape is quite clear. That's the smell. The smell of the skunk ape is how it got its hyphenated name, as it's apparently very, very pungent. It's so strong that it can seep into the area you're in before the Sasquatch even reaches you, such is the case of Dave, who apparently encountered one in the Everglades. He was in the Everglades with a friend and their dogs. Suddenly, the dogs picked up an unfamiliar scent and rushed off. But mere minutes later, the dogs came back, scared for their lives. They bolted back into the bed of the truck and they would not leave it. Dave himself went to investigate, and he saw, lying down in the brush off the road, an 8-foot-tall creature, one that would later reveal glowing red eyes. Dave stomped on the creature to see if it was alive, and it was, and it screamed very loudly as a result. Dave instinctively shot at the creature, which caused even more noises to come from the forest area he was in. He beat it back to his truck and he got out of there. Number 4. Fouke, Arkansas. There is a legend in Fouke, Arkansas of a creature called the Boggy Creek Monsters, or the Fouke Monster. The legend is so prevalent in culture of the United States that it actually spawned 2 different drive-in movies, The Legend of Boggy Creek and Boggy Creek 2. As the story itself goes, in 1971, a pair of 7-foot-tall creatures came from the swamplands in Fouke and walked around until they found a family set up in the backwoods of the area. The creatures then proceeded to attack the house and try to get at the family inside. So much so that one actually got its arm inside the house and tried to grab one of the girls. And when one of the boys went outside to see what was going on, the creature tackled him. The only reason the family was saved was that their shotgun blast scared them away. End of the story? Well, not quite. In fact, the tales of these creatures continued on for decades, with many reporting large, dark shapes moving throughout the area. In fact, in 2000, a bow hunter was in the area looking for game around dawn, and one of these creatures apparently found him and tried to get at him. When its hand got cut on the arrowhead, it screamed, and the hunter described it as thus. It was louder than a car horn, and it was at my feet. It scraped the crap out of me, so I started yelling back and cussing. It ran off, breaking trees and tearing down everything in its path. I sat there for 15 minutes until it got daylight and I left. I believe that I scared him or her as much as it scared me. Number 3. Mount St. Helens, Washington. Mount St. Helens is a well-known tourist attraction, but according to many stories, it's also one that has brought forth many Bigfoot sightings, and not all in the way you might expect. One such story came from 1981. The mountain volcano erupted, and when it did, several bodies were airlifted away from the site. But those who got a glimpse of this noticed that the bodies weren't human. They were much bigger and much hairier, making some believe that the government noticed this and wanted to examine the creatures themselves. An older story of Bigfoot in the area came in 1924, in a gorge just 2 miles away from the mountain. Apparently, a group of miners were holed up in a house, and over the course of a single night, a pack of apes came and tried to break into their cabin. This was started by an encounter with one of the apes earlier in the day. They spotted a 7-foot creature watching them from across a river. One of the miners got scared and fired at the creature, but it didn't hit. The creature apparently followed them home and then got its friends and came back to try and get the miners. The miners all survived and they left the gorge and the area the very next day. This encounter is known as the Battle of Ape Canyon. Number 2. HONOBIA, Oklahoma. A more recent tale of a Sasquatch or Bigfoot sighting came from HONOBIA, Oklahoma, where a family was apparently under siege by a group of Bigfoot. This started out when the head of the family, Tim, along with his brother Mike, went out into their 30-acre field of land and started planting snow beans. This in turn lured in a lot of deer, which were shot by the two in order to protect their field. After doing this, the Sasquatch moved into the mountain area around their property, and they would circle their house almost every day. This creature is getting bolder every time it returns. This thing is huge, it walks upright, smells like a musty urinal, burned hair type odor. He repeatedly comes back in the early morning hours after midnight and harasses them until just before dawn, Tim said. With each passing week, the Bigfoot would go and do more and more damage to the household. Eventually, one of the Sasquatch came up to their window and growled at the family. Tim and Mike fought the creature outside and eventually killed it. But before they could get the body to a safe place, another Sasquatch appeared and took it. The siege of HONOBIA was over for the most part. The family would remove the snow beans, and after a few more fights, the family was left alone. Number 1. Bluff Creek, California. Perhaps the most famous video of Bigfoot was taken back on October 25, 1967, by Roger Patterson and Bob Gimlin. However, the men didn't intend to make a legendary video that day. They were traveling on horseback in California and heading to a tributary from the Klamath River. After riding 25 miles, they went and rounded a place called Bluff Creek. And there Bigfoot was. Terrified but intrigued, the man grabbed a camera. An older one, obviously, as this was 1967, and rolled the now legendary footage. What's most important to note here is that this was long before the time of special effects and certain kinds of editing. So debunking this tape has been a bit hard for some, which makes the case for a Bigfoot existing in California all the more compelling. After the event, both the men admitted that they were terrified of what they saw, even going on to say that Bigfoot actually looked disgusted at the sight of the two. Not long after the footage was released, a tale was revealed of an encounter with Bigfoot that happened back in 1952. A man apparently encountered a creature that described much like Bigfoot, and only barely got away with his life. Thanks for watching! What'd you think of these Bigfoot stories? Have you ever seen anything like Bigfoot? Let us know in the stories. Let us know your stories in the comments below. And be sure to subscribe, and I'll see you next time.